In this video, we'll be going over the 3 different exponent rules in algebra, and then I will add in some important facts. So the product rule we're going to list as it is x to the m times x to the n. That means that when we multiply these, we would actually add the exponents m plus n, so whatever numbers there are. We're going to write the x once and they add the exponent. Quotient rule is when we're dividing. So let's say we have x to a power of, say, n, m over x to the power of n. We're going to subtract the exponent. So all that means is you're going to take the top exponent minus the bottom exponent. You're only going to write x once. The power rule is when we have x to some power raised to another power. And in this case, we're going to do x, again, we're going to write it once, so we're going to do m times n. You're going to multiply those. So let's see those actual examples and what that means. So let's say we are given x to the third, and we have to multiply it times x to the fifth. So what happens there, and I could write it in parentheses like that for multiplication, or I could put a dot in between. So remember, the rule is when we multiply these, we're going to add the exponents. You're going to get x to the 3 plus 5 or x to the 8. That's what you do with those, you add them. So let's say we then have x times x to the third. So because there's parentheses next to each other, we're multiplying. Notice there's no exponent written above that x. Well, that means there's a 1. So think of that as a 1. You can even write it in if you want. So when we multiply those, we're going to get x to the 1 plus 3 or x to the 4th power. So then when we go on to the next rule here, we're going to have, it's going to be the quotient rule. And quotient means we're dividing. So we're going to have some x to some power divided by x to a different power. Again, these could be any variables, but I'm using x right now. So let's say we have x to the 7th written over x to the 3rd. That means dividing. We're doing x to the 7th divided by x to the 3rd. You write the letter x once, and then you do 7 minus 3 equals x to the 4th. So whatever's on top, the exponent on top, minus the exponent on the bottom. Here again, let's say we have x to the 5th over x to the 5th. Well, our rule is we write the x once, and we do the top minus the bottom. 5 minus 5 is 0. X is 0, which is anything to the 0 is 1. So that's how we do the quotient rule. You're going to do the exponent in top minus the exponent in the bottom. Now for the power rule, this is a situation where we're going to have a variable to an exponent inside of parentheses, and then there's another exponent outside that. So it's x cubed raised to the 2nd power, or x cubed squared. We multiply those exponents. So we do 3 times 2, we get x to the 6th. So that's the power rule. Notice I only write the x once. Okay, so you're going to, let's say you have x to the 5th, in parentheses, raised to the 1/2 power. I'm going to multiply the 5 times the 1/2, and I'm only going to write the x once. It's going to be x to the 5/2. That's the power rule. Now, all of these rules are going to be a little bit more complicated when we add in something called we deal with something called coefficients, okay? And coefficients are the numbers in front of our variables. For instance, if you have 3x to the 4th, the 3 is a coefficient of the x variable. It's a number in front. And so we're going to have to pay attention to those because usually there's numbers in front of the variables. And so it depends on the rule. So let's say we're back to multiplying. So we have a product rule. I have 3x to the 4th times 2x squared. Notice I'm writing in parentheses so they're multiplied. So I know coefficient, the first one is 3, and the coefficient of the next parentheses is 2. I'm going to multiply those straight out just like normal. So it's going to be 3 times 2. And then don't forget we're going to go to adding the exponents when it's the product rule. Right? We're multiplying the x's. We again write the x once, and we add the exponents. So be careful. Sometimes people mix it up. You have to multiply the coefficients, then switch back to adding for the exponents. So this would be a 6x, and then adding the exponents would be to the 6th. That's how you do it with the coefficient when you're doing the product rule. So you're also going to have where you have coefficients in the quotient rule, which is the next rule we learned. So you're going to have something, say 9y to the 5th over 12y to, let's say, to the, we didn't put a power, so it's really to the 1st. Okay, so 9 over 12, we can simplify that just like we would our fractions. What goes into both 9 and 12? 3. So you divide the 9 by 3, get 3. You divide the 12 by 3, you get a 4. So now the exponents, remember, it's quotient rule. We do the exponent on the top variable minus the exponent on the bottom. So we're going to write y 5 minus 1. I'm not going to get into whether they have negatives or anything right now, just keeping it straightforward. These are the rules for beginning when you're learning them. So we're going to have 3y to the 4th over 4, or you can write it as 3/4 and then write the y to the 4th. So that's using quotient rule with coefficients. Now, coefficients in the power rule, this tends to really catch people a lot of the time. It's kind of thing where you know it, but you forget to do it. So let's say we have 5x cubed in parentheses squared. So we know that we're going to be multiplying the 3 and the 2. We're multiplying those exponents because it's a power to a power. Okay, but we're not multiplying the 5 times the 2. You don't multiply the coefficient times the exponents. You have to switch. Okay, we multiplied the 3 times 2, but you're going to raise that 5 to the second power. Okay, you have to do 5 squared. So that's how you deal with the coefficients. You do it, whatever the power is outside the parentheses, you do the coefficient, in this case 5, to that power, or 5 squared. Then you do the x to the 6, and you simplify the 5 squared to 25, x to the 6. So that's how